Throughout the year, but especially during the summer, visitors come to Old Town Portsmouth for, among other things, the history and the live music. We'll tell you about both of those right here, right now on this June 2023 episode of Portsmouth Now. Welcome to this June 2023 episode of Portsmouth Now. I'm your host, Rob Lauer. Here in Old Town Portsmouth during the summer, the sound of music rings from the pavilion to the seawall waterfront to restaurants up and down High Street. Our first guest today is Keith Toller, Assistant Director of Museums and Tourism, to tell us more about what's available. Keith, welcome to Portsmouth Now.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, glad to have you here. Now, you're going to tell us about music, because if a person likes live music, really, Portsmouth is a great place to come during the summer. What is their biggest venue for live music?
Well,
here?
The biggest venue for live music is going to be the Atlantic Union Bank Pavilion. Mm-hmm. They have a whole season of concerts coming in. They just finished the Robert Plant and Alison Krauss, which was a fantastic show. I got to go and see that show. But coming up, they've got the Doobie Brothers, the Goo Goo Dolls. Let's see, Bare Naked Ladies will be here. You got all the cheat notes. Australian Pink Floyd is going to be here. Lindsey Sterling, who's a violin player, very, very popular, but she's going to be appearing with Walk Off the Earth, which is one of my bands that I like a whole lot. And then they've got Sad Summer Festival is coming back. They're touring all around the country, and they'll be here, and that features Taking Back Sunday, The Maine, and Mom Jeans is another band that's going to be there. But it's a whole group of musicians that will be there. And then, believe it or not, hip hop turns 50 this year.
Oh my gosh.
And so, yes,
I feel old.
They're going to be doing a hip hop turns 50 show with a lot of different hip hop artists that will be coming in. So, and that starts, the next concert is going to be the Doobie Brothers, which is right before the 4th of July. And then it goes all the way through September. Okay.
And so people can go to the pavilion's website and find out information about tickets and pricing and exact dates.
Correct.
And all
exact
of that.
dates, pavilion.com. And our pavilionconcerts.com, and then you can find all that information there, or you can find it on our website at Portsmouth. Visit portsva.com.
Okay,
that's the good one. Go to my website.
Okay,
visit portsva.com. You can find everything we're going to talk about today. You can find on our calendar.
Fantastic. All right. So, and besides this pavilion, we have, I know there are festivals throughout the year and other events that happen weekly, monthly, but there's also a lot of just music in Old Town and really across the city at various restaurants and things like that.
Well, we have another new music venue that just opened. It's called The Famous. It's located upstairs above the Old Town Public House.
Okay.
And so they've been bringing in some bands too. So coming up in June, they're going to have Tim McGraw cover band that's coming in. They're going to have a Stevie Nicks cover band that's coming in. So both of those will be here, and then they've got some other performances scheduled as well. But those are the two big draws. These are bands that are touring the country, doing covers of Stevie Nicks and Tim McGraw. So
that's great.
It should be it's in a beautiful venue as well.
Yeah, now where is that located?
It's above the Old Town Public House on Court Street.
Okay. And this is where the famous
department store was in that whole block. Yes, absolutely.
Right.
So, but yeah, that's the newest venue we have. And then you're right, you can see live music all over town. The Renaissance, for example, they program Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights.
Wow.
And you can sit out on the patio. Of course, that's one of the best views
gorgeous.
in all of Hampton Roads.
I haven't seen Norfolk until you've seen it from Portsmouth.
Right, and then they put in, if you haven't been lately, they've put in fire pits. And you can buy a little s'mores package and roast s'mores while you're listening to music. So it's a lot of fun to do that. And then, of course, the Rivers Casino is here, and they have a place inside the casino called the Sound Bar, and they're programming dance bands of all varieties on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights as well.
Okay.
So it's a good time and a good place to go and hear live music.
Okay.
But then the smaller restaurants, we really want to support local musicians. Your acoustic guitar players and singers and songwriters, and you can find those at our breweries. They're always booking entertainment, especially on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Momac Brewing, you've got Harbor Trails Brewing Company, and the new Post-Secondary Brewing is also bringing in live music. Just over here at the coffee shop, once a month they do what's called acoustic carnival, and they feature local artists from all over Hampton Roads in a very small setting, and it's a really nice place to hear some good music.
So really, if you come over on the weekends to Old Town, walk up down High Street, and just if you wander in some of these restaurants and bars, you're going to find live music.
Barron's Pub always has live music on the weekends. You go to Midtown, Amici's has live music on the weekends. You go out to Churchland, the Barrel has live music on the weekends. So really, there's a lot of restaurants that are putting in live music and bringing people in.
Okay, well, fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us, for telling us about the pavilion, and for everything else that's happening musically around the city.
Oh yeah, support local musicians, that's what I say.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Mark Polomarchuk, Director of Portsmouth Parks and Recreations, joins us next to tell us about the 2023 Seawall Music Festival and this summer's Sunset Thursdays concert series at its new location in Festival Park. Mark, welcome back to Portsmouth Now.
Thank you for having me, Rob.
So we have a lot of music happening this summer in Portsmouth.
Yes, we do, yes. We have our Umoja Festival that kicks off in May, of course, Memorial Day weekend, and then we roll right into our Seawall Music Festival on June 9th and June 10th.
Great.
June 9th, it starts at 6 p.m. and it goes until 11 p.m. And then on Saturday, June 10th, it starts at 2 p.m. and it will go right up into 9:30 p.m. when the fireworks hit.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
Okay.
and there's not a bad place to watch fireworks along the seawall, especially along Crawford Parkway.
Okay, fantastic. Now, we also have the Sunset Thursday concert series that is, again, this summer.
Yes, so the very next week after Seawall Music Festival, we have our Sunset Thursday concert series starting on June the 15th. And we have a new location this year. It's at Festival Park, which is where we have a lot of our other festivals. We ran into a problem, which was a good problem last year. Our former space was just outgrown. We were regularly getting 4,000 or more attendees every concert.
Wow.
So we had to find a bigger space to accommodate all those people.
Well, that's great. That's
Yes.
great. So any idea who some of the artists will be playing this summer?
We have a lot of our local favorites that'll be coming back, the Rondells, Raw Jazz, the ones that we know are gonna draw a crowd.
Okay. And what time does that start on Thursday?
So it'll be every Thursday starting on June 15th, and it'll start at 6:30 p.m. and it goes until 9 p.m.
Wow. The fun way to sort of right after hump week, hump day to end the week.
It certainly is, and it's free and open to the public. It's a nice family environment, so we invite the whole family out.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for coming here and telling us about it. Now, are there any things coming up for July 4th weekend?
There is actually. We have our annual Shagging July 4th celebration, which is a celebration of Bill Dill and the Rondells, originally from Portsmouth, and beach music.
Okay.
So it's a nice place to come out, do some shag dancing. We have our Tidewater concert band that will be playing some traditional 4th of July music after that. And then again, it will culminate at 9:30 with the fireworks.
And will this be in the same area, the Festival Park area, the Seawall areas?
So the Shaggin' on High event will be at High Street Landing.
Okay.
Yes.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks for coming here and telling us all about it. And be sure to check out the Seawall Music Festival and Sunset Thursdays. And of course, don't forget 4th of July. Stephen Gurnett joins us next to tell us about concerts in the courtyard and other events taking place this summer at the Portsmouth Art and Cultural Center. Stephen, welcome back to Portsmouth Now.
Thank you very much, Rob.
Now, the first Friday of every month, there are concerts in the courtyard of the Portsmouth Art and Cultural Center. Can you tell us a little bit about what's coming up in June and July?
Absolutely. These go through October. They're free and open to the public, and they're from 5 to 8 p.m. And there's a cash bar and snacks available for purchase. And this month, this upcoming month in June, we have one of my favorite acts in this area. It is the Portsmouth Jazz Experience, featuring vocals by Von Trell Morris, and she is stellar. The whole band is stellar. We're talking about a very large group, and each member is a virtuoso on their musical instrument, or in Von Trell's case, her vocals. And after that, in July, we have one of the more locally favorite acts, Alan Hudson and the Half Moons, his band, and he is very well known. He grew up in this area, right off Court Street, and he was part of the band Court Street and Company.
Okay.
In fact, and we'll get another group from that same band. His name is Jonah Ross. So him and Alan were both a big part of that Court Street Company band. So they'll be performing separately in 2 different events. So
solo artists.
Yeah, Alan's will be in July, and that is, I believe that is July 7th. And then Jonah Ross is going to be performing in September for the first Friday in September. Yeah.
Okay, this is again first Friday of every month from 5 to 7, 8, and there's seating, but you can also like bring lawn chairs.
Yeah, it's a good idea to bring your lawn chair. And also, I want to mention that the exhibits are also open free to the public during that time.
So when the band takes a break, you go inside and enjoy it for free.
Exactly. And we have 2 exhibits on view. We'll have a changing exhibit on the 2nd floor, but that will open June 17th. And it will feature local artists who are all painters. So the exhibit's called Color Outside the Lines. And they're well-known artists from this region, a wide variety of fantastic, colorful works that are fun, and they'll be a visual antidepressant. And currently on the 1st floor, we have an exhibit by a Virginia Beach artist named Pam Ponce, who photographed the barrier islands on the eastern shore of Virginia. And she's also made some cyanotype prints from that experience as well. So she's an environmentalist as well as an artist. So she does a lot of work in the areas of Virginia that are threatened habitats. She did a project with the Dismal Swamp a few years ago, and we've had her work in exhibits before. So this is an exhibit that will be up through about July 9th. And then following that, we'll be getting an exhibit opening later in July by the Ceramic Design Association.
Fantastic.
And it'll be new work from them. So a lot of local art we'll be receiving and focusing on for the remainder of 2023.
Okay, now, as we said, these are free when you come to the First Friday concerts in the courtyard, but also you can come to the museum anytime it's open.
Yeah, we're open Wednesday through Sunday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we offer guided tours, and we also are open free every first Saturday of the month with a lot of music in the courtyard and programming going on at the same time. So you can just simply call ahead 393-8543 or go onto our webpage and find more information about what's going to be going on in a couple months.
And for those who may be visiting Portsmouth for the first time or haven't been here in a while, where are you located? Because I think that's very interesting too. Your facility, your building is a historic building.
The building is the 1846 Norfolk County Courthouse. That's what it was originally built for. And then in the 1960s, when Norfolk County and the city of Portsmouth got their own courthouse, a newer building, the building was vacated, and the Historical Society wanted to preserve it, and it was registered on the National Historic Registry. And then the city wanted to do something more lucrative with it. So as a way of making some revenue and also offering the community a resource. So it was originally both the Children's Museum and the Portsmouth Art Center. And the Children's Museum was on the 1st floor, and the Art Center was on the 2nd floor. But eventually, the Children's Museum, where it is located now, moved to what was the department store called Leggett's. It was right across from the old Woolworths. And so we're just a block down from the Children's Museum, which is a much bigger museum at this point. But the whole building now in the 1846 courthouse is the Portsmouth Art and Cultural Center.
And it's a beautiful building. It's right across from the historic Trinity Church. And catty corner sort of to the Commodore Theater. So it's right there really in the hub of things at the intersection of High and Court Street.
Exactly. It's part of the historic walking tour.
Yeah.
But then you can come in and see contemporary exhibits.
And of course these concerts are held in a beautiful brick courtyard with wrought iron railing fence all around. It's a gorgeous historical site too.
Exactly.
And it's really the perfect place to mingle music with your concerts in the courtyard and the history of Portsmouth.
Yeah, you can take advantage of the music and the historic aspect of it, as well as the contemporary exhibits inside.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you.
And if you have not been to the Portsmouth Art and Cultural Center, check it out. They do wonderful exhibits throughout the year. It's a beautiful facility itself, a beautiful building, and a beautiful location. And of course, if you want to have a great mix of history and art and music, check out their concerts in the courtyard at 5 p.m. on the first Friday of every month. Thank you.
What makes a city more than a point on a map? What makes it a great place to call home? Or do business? Or visit? What makes one city any different from another? In Portsmouth, we know the answer. It's our people and the places that make Portsmouth uniquely our own. All different kinds of people, from all different kinds of places, coming together in neighborhoods we all know by name. Craddock and Port Norfolk, Old Town and Truxton, Churchland and Cavalier Manor, West Haven, Park Manor, and the list goes on. Ours is a story steeped in 400 years of history. A history you can still see and hear and feel, all beautifully preserved for generations to come. And our future is just as bright. Today, Portsmouth is home to Virginia's first and only full-service casino. And that's a big win for our city. At the ports that give our city its name, Portsmouth continues to make its mark as a strategic international seaport, a proud steward to the Navy's fleet, and a powerful partner to the emerging offshore wind industry. Our tourism industry is on the rise too, with new attractions, new businesses, and a few old favorites, all coming together to make our city more inviting than ever. What makes a city more than a place on a map? Him and her and her and him and them and this place and that place and all the other people and places that make Portsmouth home.
There is a special place where wildness still grows, sheltered and cherished. A sanctuary for wildlife in the heart of bustling Hampton Roads. Welcome to Hoffler Creek Wildlife Preserve, the only urban wildlife preserve in the Commonwealth of Virginia, with 142 acres of preserved woodlands and wetlands and 3 miles of hiking trails. A riparian forest filled with pines and hardwoods. A meadow of native wildflowers and grasses. Lake Ballard, a large man-made lake, and a tidal creek with its expansive salt marsh teeming with life. You can explore and experience nature by kayak, or you can hike the winding woodland trails, or just watch natural life unfold from decks overlooking the lake, creek, and marsh, or from bird blinds throughout the preserve. You will find a warm welcome from our many diverse residents in this natural oasis of calm and serenity. Come visit Hoffler Creek Wildlife Preserve, a place where learning comes naturally and wonders never cease. Free and open to the public, Tuesday through Sunday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Old Town Portsmouth is home to the largest collection of historic homes north of Charleston, South Carolina, and south of Arlington. And visitors to its streets had the opportunity to meet some of these fascinating folk from centuries past. We're very happy to welcome to today's episode of Portsmouth Now, Dr. William White. Welcome to Portsmouth Now, Dr. White.
Sean, I'm sure.
So tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I'm a medical doctor. I run the orphanage for children whose parents died in the yellow fever epidemic back in 1855. It's not my first job. I represented Portsmouth and Norfolk County at the Virginia Secession Convention in 1861. I voted against secession, but lost that. Served in the late unpleasantness, and am much happier to be back in civilian life now.
I mean, you mentioned the orphanage and the yellow fever epidemic. That was a big event, and a lot of us have never heard of it.
Oh, quite traumatic. In 1855, a ship arrived from the Caribbean and didn't follow our health regulations. They dumped their bilge water into Crawford Bay without authorization, and it was full of mosquito larvae who hatched and spread yellow fever through the town. It's not a disease native to this area, and it went through the population like wildfire. Hundreds died, thousands fled. It was an absolutely devastating experience for Norfolk and Portsmouth.
Wow, and enough adults died that you actually had to have an orphanage for the survivors.
Yes, we opened a building on North Street for surviving children, and after I returned from the war, they appointed me director.
Wow, and how long was that there?
It was there for several decades.
Okay. Is the building still here in town?
Yes, it is. It's between Washington and Dinwiddie Streets. It's painted yellow in probably a reference to its former function.
Okay. And is that a private home now?
It is. A lot of the buildings here in what you folks call Old Town Portsmouth, and we just call Portsmouth, have repurposed several times. Private single-family homes have been broken up into apartments and condominiums. Hotels have been transformed into apartments. Department stores have become museums and galleries.
Right. But it's fascinating that this large home, because I'm familiar with it. Yeah, that was once yellow fever, an orphanage for yellow fever survivors. Wow. Yes. Fantastic. Now, you mentioned secession and that you weren't for secession.
That's correct. I recognized that if war came, it would be fought largely in Virginia and would be extremely disruptive to our interests. The loss in lives and property would be devastating, and it turned out that I was too optimistic. It was much worse than I thought.
Yeah, but oddly enough, not necessarily for Portsmouth. Portsmouth sort of survived intact. I mean, why did that happen?
Well, Portsmouth was fortunate enough, though many of the residents didn't think so at the time, to be captured very early in the war. In 1862, the division defending Norfolk and Portsmouth evacuated to reinforce the Confederate Army defending Richmond, allowing Union forces to occupy this area unopposed. And although the Navy Yard was burned, the Federals burned it in 1861 when they evacuated, and we burned it again in 1862 when we did. The area otherwise remained intact. The Navy Yard was repaired fairly quickly both times and served throughout the war. And because the federal government used the Navy Yard continuously since then, Portsmouth was able to economically recover fairly quickly after the war.
So something that was terrible at the time to the residents of Portsmouth actually ended up being sort of its salvation in a way.
Indeed. And not everyone regretted Portsmouth falling quickly. The African-American population was quite grateful because they were granted civil and political rights unprecedented before the war. In fact, the next big state convention after the war, Portsmouth elected a former slave to the Constitutional Convention in 1867. a man named George Timo, who before the war had been forbidden to even learn to read and write, learned to read while he was working at the Naval Yard for the federal government, and served on the Education Committee at the Constitutional Convention a few years later.
Wow, that's fascinating. Something I'm sure a lot of people have no idea about. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and telling us about yourself and telling us about this history.
Happy to oblige.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, we'd like to welcome to Portsmouth Now Mr. Robert Irving. Mr. Irving, welcome to Portsmouth Now.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit of something about yourself, when you lived.
Well, I don't want to be here.
In Portsmouth.
Not at all. And the reason is because Portsmouth really don't hold fond memories for me. I was forced to flee my home and leaving behind my wife and children. And that was terrifying and traumatic enough.
So I'm assuming then you were enslaved, your family?
Absolutely. We were both, me and my wife Julia, we were both enslaved. And we actually got married here, and we were allowed to live together until I heard that I was going to be sold. So whether I was going to be sold to be separated from my family or whether I escaped, still would have been a traumatic ending. So I chose to escape, leaving behind everyone and everything that I loved.
Wow. Did you ever see them again?
Actually, yes, I did see my wife, Julia, and I did see my children. But by the time that we both saw each other, we were both remarried. I was remarried to a woman named Clarissa Davis, and actually changed my name when I got up north to Sheridan Ford. And by that time, also, my wife, Julia, was remarried. Also.
Now, a question. A lot of people know the answer to this, but when people were enslaved, were their marriages legal? Were they even recognized by law? Or is it just something that the people who were enslaved?
Yeah, well, actually, that brings a very funny story. When I passed away, my second wife, Clarissa, actually wanted inheritance over my estate, and my first son, by my first wife Julia, which his name was Frank, he wanted inheritance over my estate, and so Clarissa said since it was a slave marriage, and since to her it wasn't legally binding, that she's the one that should have control over my estate. So many people back then didn't really believe that slave marriages was actually legally binding.
Wow, and it's just indicative of, even though no one before the days of slavery took them as legal marriages, for the people involved, these were real families.
Real marriages, real families, absolutely.
You know, generations or decades later, there were still ramifications from all of that.
Absolutely,
wow.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us a story or something that we might find interesting about the period in which you lived, or about some aspect of history from that period?
Well, absolutely. One of the things that I love is that I used to attend a church here. It's one of the oldest African American churches here in the city of Portsmouth, which is Emmanuel AME Church, founded in 1772. And it was called Old Emmanuel at first, and it used to be at a location right here in the city of Portsmouth called Glasgow Park. Mm-hmm. Now, I wasn't a part of the Old Emmanuel, but I was a part of Emmanuel AME. And one of the most fascinating things about this church is that, one, that you get to go inside, and that they have hidden passageways still today there at the church, where safe harbor for slaves used to be. And if you go inside, you get to see these passageways. And this church holds such fond memories for me because of, I was one of those escaped slaves. Exactly. That used to go to the church and also use the church as a safe harbor.
So if people come here to Portsmouth Old Town, they can take the tour. They can actually see this church that was a stop on the Underground Railroad.
Absolutely, and also go in it to see those passageways.
Fantastic.
And learn the history of it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking time to come here and share us about your life and the times in which you lived.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. We're very pleased to welcome to Portsmouth Now Captain William Crawford. Captain Crawford, welcome.
Good day to you, sir.
Good day to you. So you lived in the 1600s, I believe?
Absolutely. Died in 1699.
All right, so you just missed the beginning of the
Just
70s.
missed it, sir.
All
Yes.
right. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and about the times in which you lived.
Well, I consider myself very fortunate because I was given the opportunity to come to the New World. And as a captain, I was able to sponsor people for passage to the New World, which was called head rights. For every person I sponsored, His Royal Majesty gave me land. And so I was able to accumulate a vast fortune in property here, what we now call Virginia Beach, Norfolk, and eventually Portsmouth itself.
All right. And so you owned all of this before there were cities? So
Absolutely, owned it all. It was quite an exceptional opportunity for a person of no means from Great Britain to be able to come and create the kind of wealth that no one had ever seen before.
Right, and create a country in the
Create a
process.
country,
Probably not
absolutely.
intending to.
Absolutely.
But you did. All
And
right.
so, who could have ever imagined? For example, what I'm wearing. Most people think red coats have to do with just the British, but actually this coat was a sign of wealth.
Oh, okay.
Because you could not get this scarlet color, sir, without the cochineal bug.
Without
So-
the what?
The cochineal bug. So there was the shells of a particular bug that when you ground them up
Uh-huh.
and you dyed wool fabric, it made this scarlet, brilliant color. So in our day, sir, you did not show your wealth in any other way than what you wore.
Oh.
So when I was able to wear a coat like this, I was able to say that I had arrived.
Because I guess those bugs were
Very rare,
very,
sir.
very rare.
Very
All right,
rare.
that's fascinating. And we don't think of that. We think of, now we just sort of buy something from the store. And
Absolutely.
Put it in the,
And
in the washing
every-
machine and
And actually, sir, everything in my day and in my grandson's day was handmade. Whether you were poor, whether you were middle class, whether you were wealthy, all your clothes were made to measure.
I
they were
suppose when you
quite
came
comfortable.
over here, you didn't have tailor shops and things. at
No,
first, so-
we brought those folks over and they custom made all our clothing for us.
Wow. So that's fascinating. Anything else about the time in which you lived? Any other stories or things you think we might find interesting? Because that is
Well,
so
obviously it
different.
was quite a dangerous time, quite an adventurous time. Also quite an opportune time. And so as my wife and I ended up raising our grandchildren, because my dear son died, his generation was able to see the fruits of our labors incredibly as he was able to sponsor and create this wonderful town through the act of the legislature.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and really giving us a glimpse into what brought forth Portsmouth, and not only that, but the entire Hampton Roads area.
You're
Thank
very welcome,
you.
sir. Good day to you.
Good day. Our next guest is Mrs. William Crawford, Margaret Crawford. Mrs. Crawford, welcome to Portsmouth Now.
Thank you for having me with these strange contraptions.
I know, I did. This was probably very foreign to you.
Oh, very.
Now, you lived, if I'm understanding it, like in the 1600s into the early 1700s.
I did. I outlived my husband, and my precious grandson, who founded this town, looked after me and
And you
cared for me.
outlived your grandson.
No, I outlived my husband. My
But you-
precious grandson cared for me, but he founded the town of Portsmouth.
Wow. I'm sure you're very proud of
Very
that.
proud.
Although confused by all of the modern things we have here now. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things that were happening during your lifetime?
Well, the fascinating thing was that my husband owned land all the way out to what I understand they now call Virginia Beach. And because he owned so much land and died and left it to our grandson, who we raised because our precious son died, we raised our grandson and our granddaughter. There was this little rebellion out in Surrey County called Bacon's Rebellion.
Oh.
And they ended up hanging the man that owned the land that is now Portsmouth. And because they hung him, they had his land to disperse, and because my grandson already had all that land out to Virginia Beach, they thought, well, he knows what he's doing, so they gave him all the rest of that land.
And he wasn't rebelling against
And
the king
he was
either.
not rebelling against the king. So they gave him that land, and he decided that this would be a fine place because of our deep water and our shipyard to start a little town that's Portsmouth, named for Portsmouth, England. And he had it all designed out in his head. The High Street was the widest street, Court Street And the intersection of High was where everything was going to happen. And then all the little streets and what we call now Old Town, then was just town, were narrow and wide and narrow and wide. And so you would base your size of your house on whether you were on a wide street or a little narrow street. Our tradesmen and people who helped make things go were on the little narrow streets, and our landowners who had property way out in the countryside, but this was their city house, so they could get close to the ports, the wharfs, and their shipping industry.
And I guess those way out in the country probably is, from our perspective, 10 blocks down High Street somewhere,
Right,
probably.
right. I think now one of them is Churchland. It has a huge Baptist church that's been around since very, very, very,
Yeah,
very
this is
early.
1750s, I think. Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you so much in giving us a little peek into what life was like in Portsmouth back during your lifetime.
Well, it's good to see you. Good day to you.
Good day to you. For our last guest from the past, we welcome Mrs. Bernard Mignon. Am I saying that correctly? Mignon?
Yes, it's a French name, but obviously from my accent, I'm not French. But my husband was French.
Oh, okay.
Yes, in fact, he was an aide to the great Marquis de Lafayette during the War for Independence. And it was during that war that we met. And then after the war, we settled here in Portsmouth, and we were quite happy for about a decade. And then things went bad. And you can hear all about that tragic story if you come on our Spirits of Old Town walk, which History Alive is launching this summer.
Okay.
Yes, and so I want to be very clear though, you'll see very different ghosts and hear very different stories than you would on the Old Town Ghost Walk that happens every October.
Oh, okay, no connection to that whatsoever.
Well, we're hoping that it'll wet the whistle for folks that, you know, that might want, that are interested in that sort of thing, and that they'll come in October to the big
Ghost Walk.
event.
And
Yes.
if they come to Ghost Walk and see this, come hear what you're offering as well.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
There are a lot of stories in Portsmouth.
Oh,
in
there
history like
are.
that.
Oh, there are very many. And we've actually solicited some help from folks. And we're getting a lot of different stories that, you know, that'll be part of the walk. So we're very excited about it, as well as our other walk that we're gonna be launching called Sails and Rails.
Sails and Rails.
Yes, and that's about, of course, sailing ships and other types of ships that made their way to our fair city of Portsmouth, and modes of transportation like the railroad.
Which was right down here in the waterfront was originally
Yes, it
railroad,
was.
yeah.
And so, but it won't just be about the Seaboard Railroad. It'll also we'll touch a little bit on the secret railroad. The one that secreted slaves aboard ships on their way north. So we'll touch on that a little bit too. So that makes 5 in all as far as the walks that are available here in Portsmouth.
Okay, let's go over those again. So you have the Sails and Rails, and then you have the
Spirits of Old Town. And then we also have our Homes and History Walk, which was our original tour, that takes you through the largest collection of period architecture between Alexandria and Charleston, and tells stories about that. And then we have our Heroes in History, which is our African American History Walk, and that is consistently every first Saturday at 11 o'clock of first Saturday of the month. And then we do it all throughout Black History Month, but it's not just relegated to February. We do that all year round. And so I've forgotten one. Portsmouth Remembers, which is also a newer walk that is actually a cemetery walk. And it'll take place on Sundays when folks usually visit the cemetery and I think that we had Dr. White was here earlier.
Yes, he was.
Yes, he did. So we're really excited about all the different offerings, and you can take those as private tours as well. All you need to do is call us. Sometimes folks have people visiting them from out of town, and that seems to be a lot of folks take our walks for that reason. They want to show off the town to their visitors, and so we're happy to have them.
So, you know, if someone arrives here in town and they're here for a day or two, and they have, how would they would go to a certain? They come here to the visitor center, I guess. And
well, they can get. We have material here at the visitor center, and also they could visit historyalive.info, which is your
historyalive.info.
Yes, your internet. I don't know very much.
Oh, you don't know about that. That's right.
But they told me to say it, so I do.
So it's historyalive.info.
.info. That's correct.
All right, and there you can find out about the tours themselves, prices for the tours, tickets, and is there a certain time each week that a tour is offered, or can you like book them on the spot, or if you know a few days ahead of time?
You can book them definitely. Usually give a 24 hours notice is all that's needed most of the time.
Okay.
But yes, we normally have a tour of some kind, a walk of some kind every weekend, usually on Saturdays or Sunday. And but we don't like to lock ourselves in, so to speak, because things change, because of weather or events that are in town. And so our schedule isn't the same from weekend to weekend, from month to month. So the best thing is just to go and look at there's a page there called Tour Schedule.
Okay.
And you can go there and you can find out when they are, where they are, and how much they are. So buy your ticket there.
So Portsmouth residents watching this, in order to find out, they go to www.historyalive.info.
That's correct.
And if someone in Greater Tidewater, Hampton Roads is watching this and they want to schedule a tour, they go to that site as well.
That's correct.
And then they will, I guess, be led by you and your cohorts from the past.
That's correct. There will be
history alive.
Right. There will be a character from Portsmouth's rich and colorful history there to greet them and to guide them.
Well, thank you, and all of your friends from the past who are making history come alive for all of us here.
Well, thank you.
And if you do want to take advantage of these great history walking tours in Old Town Portsmouth, simply log on to www.historyalive.info. Thanks for being here. That's it for our show today. If you'd like to find out more information about any of the events featured on today's show or any other events taking place in Portsmouth this June, simply log on to www.portsvacation.com and then come to Portsmouth, where if you give us a day, we'll give you a vacation. I'm Rob Lauer. Join me next month for the July episode of Portsmouth Now.